Hey Keith.
Hey, good morning.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good.
I
Looks like
thought I was
Mike
going to
is.
have a guest on, a friend of mine today, but he couldn't, he's not sure he's going to be able to connect, but maybe next time we'll.
Looks like Mike is trying to get on. Mike, can you hear us?
Yes, I am here.
Oh,
There you
okay.
are.
There we go.
Okay.
Yeah, I was
Didn't
just
see
checking
you
my
for a minute
background.
there.
Every now and then I switch my background. If a kid gets on a Zoom call with their parents, I switch my background to the Muppets. I just wanted to make sure I didn't enter with that.
Well, good morning to you, and glad you could join us here. And let's give this thing a couple more minutes, and hopefully pick up the rest of our people bit by bit. Sorry about the mix-up there, Mike. I guess I misunderstood and thought
No,
everything
no,
was squared away.
it was on my end. Yeah, everything was squared away. I just didn't recognize the email address and on that email account. So I had it on the calendar. Like I said, I was just going to tell you, hey, I'm sorry, I'm speaking to CBN tomorrow. So that would have been basically the response you got.
That would have worked. That
Well, it
would
would
have
have been
worked.
even funnier if I just would have said sorry. I have another speaking engagement, and then I showed up here after you. But anyway,
Morning,
yeah,
John.
it's all fine.
Morning, Keith. How are
Hey,
you?
I'm good.
Good.
I'm good. We're out doing what we can, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll give it a couple of minutes here, and people, it's tough waking up 8:30 in the morning. Corona makes you want to sleep in.
That's
Might
right.
have might have to change the meetings to 9:30.
What have you?
Or
I got you.
that interrupts with your morning nap, Keith, right?
Yeah, it would. Yo, Mike, you don't know. One of my complaints about us is like we we can't interrupt my nap time, no matter what. I don't care.
I was on a Zoom meeting last night from 7 to 9.
No, that's too long. That's too long. No, won't happen with me.
Was that
Well,
network
Rhoda,
was that network after work? The call last night, Rhoda, was that network after work?
It was. They are on an absolute blitz of meetings nationwide.
Yeah.
But that one was a national one. And then today, there's one that is no, today is a national one from 2 to 4.
Okay.
So you might want to hop in.
I will be in Anderson at a home inspection today, so
Okay.
can't join.
Let me let Alex in. Yeah, I don't know that 2 hour meetings. Oh, no, I have a 90-minute meeting rule. If you can't get it done in 90, uh, call me next time. That's kind of my rule.
Like a series of meetings. It's not one meeting. So,
I don't care. 2 hours. No, I'm good.
Hey,
I'm good.
Keith,
Hey,
I invited a guest today. I sent her the
okay,
link. If you see someone
okay,
named Jenny Webb,
not a problem.
she may or may not be able to join.
Hey, Alex. Good morning.
Morning, how are you?
Good, man.
Good.
Good. Good. I was thinking about you over the weekend, Alex, when I was uh, looking at my investments and stuff, and was like, man, this is a good time to be a good time to be me.
Yeah,
It's you know, regardless of where you feel politically, if you're making money, buddy, it's like I
yeah.
get it.
If you're in right now, you're doing well.
Yeah,
Can't
yeah,
deny it.
yeah. It's tough. It's tough, man.
Yeah.
It's tough.
Apple hit 2 trillion in market cap.
I saw that.
Crazy.
so
I
have
don't.
the debates affected the market?
The debates.
Yeah.
You mean the
You
which
mean
debates? You
the
mean the convention or the debate?
you mean the Democratic
Not the
convention?
debates. I mean, what should have been the debates, but the Democratic.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
no, not at all. I don't think. I don't think
Yeah.
anybody cares. I'm not sure anybody's really watching them.
Right.
Usually, the only people
Right.
that watch those are those are really just your political animals that watch those things. It's
Yeah.
not your undecided voter sitting down watching a convention, especially this year with it being basically a Zoom meeting.
They are bad.
Yeah,
They're really bad.
yeah, they're bad. They're bad. I've seen
Borderline.
clips. It's bad. But
I don't know
I
what
don't think your typical person. They're streaming Netflix, not watching the convention, probably.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, let's get rolling here. Anybody else is going to join us, they'll be joining us when they join us here. Uh, Once again, good morning, everybody. We will have a guest speaker this morning, Mike Mausteller. And Mike, if I get your name wrong, just straighten me out here.
That's perfect.
Good. And so, Mike, the way we normally do it is we start out by introducing ourselves. And I usually introduce people according to the way I see them on my screen. Somebody else's screen might be a little bit different. So I'm going to start over in the left there. And Rhoda, if you'll give us about a minute or so and introduce yourself.
Yeah. Hi, Mike, I'm so glad this could work out for you to be with us. That's great. Even though we're small, you have a really good group here of gentlemen. I am, as you know, Rhoda Israelov in Indianapolis, and I own Say It For You. And we write content for the web, primarily for blogs, both directly for clients and also as subcontractors to marketing agencies. So we say it for you.
John, if you'll give us a minute, please.
Absolutely. Good morning, members. And Mike, thank you for joining us. I'm John Vandersall. I'm a residential real estate agent with FC Tucker. FC Tucker is the oldest and largest independent brokerage in the state of Indiana. So I'm here in Indianapolis, and I service Marion County and surrounding counties. And yeah, the real estate market is hot and on fire. And Keith, if you want to invest, there's investment opportunities in real estate right here locally. So maybe we could talk offline about that. Maybe I'll
Talk about that, brother.
Yeah.
I talk about that.
Or maybe I'll present about that as a topic someday. As I'm learning more about investing too, and picking up more investors, people who want to invest. So yeah, good morning.
Alex, you're up.
Sure. Alex Gray. I own a company called Opine Interactive. We do email and website hosting. I'm also very involved in doing equity investments, mainly alternative style, basically private equity investments almost, but they do trade just very lightly. So.
All right. And my name is Keith Rand. I own a company called First Quality Printing, and I'm the host for today. And Mike will let you do your introduction when it's time for you to speak. We usually spend about 10 or 15 minutes talking about our businesses and anything that's been active or specific today. If anything's interesting going on. So with that, has anybody got anything interesting they want to talk about their business or business generally? Anybody?
A question for John. Do you use or do you ever hire photographers to do virtual walkthroughs of properties, or does Tucker provide that service?
Good question. Tucker does not provide. I have not hired a photographer for that purpose, but I have access to ones who have the capability. It's quite expensive.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Why
I
the
know someone
curiosity?
who asked me about that, so that's why I'm asking.
Okay. Yeah, it's a possibility. It's a lengthy process. So you've seen, anyone who's seen where you can click through a house and kind of walk through it, almost not unlike a street view from Google. Is that what you're speaking of, Rhoda? Yeah. So what they do, they put the camera on a tripod and they move it and they take pictures, 360 pictures from each spot. So it's timely and it's pricey. So I haven't purchased it, but it's out there. I was almost going to get a large listing by large, good sized property up in Sheridan, she picked another agent, but for that property, because of location and size, I was going to invest in, because I pay for the pictures, as you know. I was going to invest in that kind of walking tour.
How much does that run now to do that roughly for a normal sized house, average?
For the walking tour pictures?
Yeah.
I don't even know. I want to say
$300-400 or something.
yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, about good 300.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. I'll share something new to something I heard new yesterday. I have a client who purchased a condo in Pike last year, and now they purchased a puppy dog. So now they want to get a house with a backyard. And she has a daughter attending Pike. So my assumption was, and she even told me I need to stay in Pike. One day later, she said, well, you know what? We're doing this distance learning thing. I guess I don't need to live in Pike. So, yeah, imagine how could affect things. You don't have to live. If you don't have to live.
It would be that way for the long term.
No, it's not going to be that way for the long term.
I know.
Not a chance.
Couple of years, maybe.
Yeah, these kids are struggling as it is. I think with the online learning, it's just not working.
Well,
even at the college level. Go ahead.
Yeah. Oh, trust me. Yeah, that's a fact. I think it's just an absolute challenge in society to try to figure out that dynamic of how we educate our kids, run our households, do our work, and at the same time do social distancing along with virtual XYZ. This is, once again, we've had this discussion. This is uncharted territory. Mm-hmm. And I'm not sure that anybody has good solutions, and certainly no one has great solutions. So yeah, I think you're right, Alex. I don't think it's long term, but at this moment, I'm not sure what the window looks like for what long term means. I
don't think we know. I mean, the virus is going to virus. Virus is going to do what it's going to do. It doesn't matter what we do. It's going to do what it's going to do. It's going to spread if it wants to spread. It's going to die out when it's ready to die out. And that's the way they've always worked. I mean, we've never been great at coming up with vaccines for viruses, especially one that's a strain of the cold virus, which we still haven't solved that problem. Everybody still gets colds. This is basically a mutation of that. So they may come up with a vaccine. I don't know how great it's going to be. I don't know that it prevented it might lessen the severity. But, I'm not a scientist either. I have my doubts, I guess. I mean, I'm hopeful. I mean, I hope they do. It'd be great.
Right.
It'd be great.
Yeah, I just think, and Mike will be talking hopefully a little bit about you being this social distance and how you run your business and all that kind of stuff. But I just think, Mike, I still travel by air, and I'm flying back and forth to different places. And I've talked to the group, this business model of middle seat not being filled, et cetera, et cetera. I just don't see it as a viable long-term business strategy. And, going to restaurants and all these other things, you can't have a situation where you build for 100 seats and you're always at 60 seats. And that's your max. I'm not sure how that handles itself in the long term as a business solution. So we'll see. Maybe somebody smarter than me knows how to make it work. I don't, but we'll see.
It doesn't work. They've even tried business models made that way. Midwest Air, I think they were out of Wisconsin, actually had what they called first class seating all the way back, and no chance of making it. And then, I remember when I flew before 9/11, the planes weren't full.
Right.
Ever. They had so many routes and time slots that they were never full, which was great for the passenger. I loved flying back then.
Right.
But none of them were making any money. They were all losing money hand over fist, going bankrupt about every 5 years. So it's not viable. I mean, the government's probably just going to have to kind of support them until this is past us, I think. I just don't see how they make money. Well, unless they skyrocket prices, but then, or people still got to fly. I mean, airline business is tricky right now. About as tricky as a restaurant business.
Right. Well, they always said about the airline business, if you want to become a millionaire, start with 100 million and stay in the airline business 10 years and you'll end up as a millionaire, right? So it never was that beautiful of a business model to begin with, but
it's always a tough
it's even more challenging now, even more challenging. So same way with the restaurant business. So, you know, and obviously that affects our businesses at some point, some of us. It's going to affect our businesses at some point on how we as entrepreneurs move forward and deal with the issue of, do we have a fundamental change in how we do business in America, in the world? I don't know. I don't have any good answers for that. I'm waiting for smart guys like Mike to tell me.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
I'm here today.
Yeah, I'm just not clear how we step out of this. And then what do we do with the people the businesses and people who don't adapt? Nobody's talking about that. What do we do with those people and how do we treat those people? You know, we can have a whole conversation about that in one of our meetings. So we'll see. At some point, John, you run out of houses to sell, or you run out of people who want to buy a house because they don't have any money. So right now it's hot, but at some point I think you either run out of inventory because they ain't building no more, or somebody just says, I'm not moving. And it'll be real interesting. I don't know.
Well, I'll give you 1 minute on, have you seen or heard about people leaving Los Angeles and leaving New York City?
San Francisco.
Packing up and
big time.
Going out.
There's a Wall Street article about that.
Yeah.
These tech firms. Salesforce.com. You don't have to come back until 2021. And they're going to look for employees all over the world now. So
wow.
And that's really interesting to me. I have a grandson who'll be graduating in 2022. So, you know, now prior to that, if you wanted to work for a tech firm, you went to the coast. Now it'll be like, no, you can live in Georgia. You can live in XYZ place. Now you're not going to make coast money, but I think people are going to adjust here. So it'll be interesting.
Well, so, you know, one of the reasons people are leaving those major metros is because the reason they moved there was walkability to a restaurant, to a bar, to whatever. And now those are closed or half closed, and they look at their rent check and, what if I just moved down the road?
Right.
So plus there's a dumpster fire right outside the door too, and
it doesn't help.
Yeah,
doesn't help.
Yeah, and I saw a graph on San Francisco, and it had Boston.
Right.
Oddly, it didn't have. I don't think it had New York on there. Oddly enough, but San Francisco was like a hockey stick as far as availability. People they're just clearing out. And I think a lot of them are right now. I think immediately it is a lot of the tech people, and they're not necessarily moving out of California, but they're moving out of the city.
Yeah.
Because they don't have to be there. They don't need to go to the office, so why not? They've got big bucks. They can afford the properties. You know, actually they're probably they're probably cashing out because they're moving out of the city.
Right.
At least the ones got out early. Now I'm not so sure. I have to imagine that there's some softness in pricing in the inner cities. You know, New York, San Francisco, LA. I have to imagine it's getting soft.
Yeah.
And
So
New York has.
Go ahead.
I was going to say New York has 13,000 vacancies. It's a record in apartments.
So, you know, all these things obviously will affect us and this ongoing situation of how we deal with that moving forward. But this is the new norm, I think. And people say, well, it's temporarily disruptive. No, I think it's permanently disruptive. I think it's permanently disruptive because at some point senior management in these big companies is going to say, hey, you don't need to make that trip. Call somebody up with Zoom, or, hey, you don't need to do this or that. And so you have these collateral things that are going to happen going on. And so if you're in the travel business, or if you're in the business that provided support to travel, et cetera, you're going to be affected by these decisions. So we'll look forward to how it's going to be. Right now, though, I just want to get Mike on. Mike, hey, the way we normally do this, Mike, is we give you about 20 minutes or so to talk about you and your business, and we like to have a little Q&A. So with that in mind, we like to get you out on time. We normally end around 9:30. So hey, I'm big on like not taking people's time, and you're our guest. So with that, if you just give us a little bit of introduction, Mike, and then it's going to be the Mike Mausteller Show.
Awesome. Thank you, Keith. Can you enable screen sharing for me
Yes, sir.
while I do my introduction? Yeah, so Mike Mausteller, Buckeye Business Performance. Often we find entrepreneurs working way too many hours for way too little money. I've found that with just slightly better tools and information, businesses can have completely different results, and therefore the owners can live drastically different lives. I serve as the guide, helping people with the two areas that I focused on for 20 years in the corporate world, and that is growing businesses' revenue and then developing a team to support that growth. That's Mike Mausteller, Buckeye Business Performance. And now I'm going to share my screen.
Yeah, you should be able to share now.
Perfect. Which screen do you see? Do you see the notes
Maximizing
screen?
teams in a virtual firm.
And that's all you see is just the big slide.
The big one.
Perfect. Just wanted to make sure. Sometimes it doesn't remember which screen I'm using for me. So anyway, this is how it was set up yesterday when I checked. Just wanted to make sure. So, yeah, so that's what we're going to talk about today, maximizing teams in a virtual firm. This presentation is probably 45 minutes to a full hour. So what we're going to do is we're going to customize it as we go on the fly based on responses early on. So the goal, your goal, go ahead and write it down on a piece of paper. What is one thing you want to get out of today? Just jot it down in front of you so you have it there. Whoever's brave enough to share theirs in chat, I can make sure that we definitely hit on it in one way or another. Or you can just shout it out loud. We've got a small enough group, you won't talk over each other. All right. So we don't have to go too far into this. We've already know the journey so far has been rough. We know things have changed, and they're likely to remain changed. As we discussed earlier, you know, the chat that was going on. We don't know when it's going to end, but we know it's not tomorrow. So we need to embrace it. And, you know, as we get through this, one of the questions I'm going to have is some things have changed, but some things have changed for the better. And how do we leverage those? So not just taking the full negative perspective. So what's coming here is actually stolen from myself, so that's legal.
You're
so
good.
The course, yep. The course is over 4 weeks or 90-minute classes, so it's about 6 hours. Obviously, we're not going to cover that in 20 minutes, but just as a reference of where this is coming from. So the problem. So even prior to COVID, we had people, right? And business would be easy if there weren't people, right? I like to say. But the thing about people is they all act differently. They think differently, they behave differently, and most importantly, for today's talk, they communicate differently. And it's up to us to recognize that. So we have less visibility than we did before with how our teams are working. And this could be even as a solopreneur. So your suppliers, your vendors, you know, if you used to have any on-site meetings, and they're adapting too. So even if you always worked with them virtually, they're making this shift as well. So things can fall down on their end if they're not doing this properly. And there can be issues, right? So, isn't that Mary's job? Or, I didn't get the memo, right? A lot more of those excuses are happening these days. And really frustrating is, we can feel not understood by our teams. I thought you wanted a draft by today, right? Not the full project. Or, I'm still waiting for Jeff, and I don't talk to him, so I can't get my job done. And then this is what I thought you wanted. And again, so communication is very important, but never fear. There's an opportunity like never before. So with technology today, we can mesh with people despite not being in the same room as them. We can be understood. We have a very interesting, unique opportunity now to sort of plug and play with people so that we can find the right fit for each role. And if we put it all together, we can actually get better results with even less effort. So the big idea we'll cover today is that if we have a plan and a culture that supports a virtual workplace, we can actually end up looking like superstars. So that's just it. So if we need a plan and we need a culture that supports it, first thing we want to cover is what has really changed, right? So we need to know the change that's happened, the plan we can put together, and then supportive culture. So for the changes, we can just shout them out if you'd like. So what has really changed, right? We're still selling products and services for more than we pay for them, right? We're still doing that at the core, right? That's every business. That's what we do. So what has changed? What have you all noticed?
People more fearful. People more fearful of making decisions, particularly longer term decisions.
Right, especially with long term. Yep.
How you communicate with your client in terms of if you were a direct access individual, that might be that's changed a bit potentially. So
Sure. Absolutely. Anyone else? John, Alex, you got on today for what Keith and Rhoda were concerned about? Go ahead. Let me know what's changed. We'll make sure we touch on it somehow. Alex, you're muted at the moment. You're
Alex,
still muted.
You're muted.
No, you're not.
Yeah, mine's more along the lines of what Rhoda said. It's kind of the deer in the headlights because I'm involved with companies that actually do investments into other companies, and it's kind of everybody's just frozen in place. They're not doing anything, which I think is probably going to be looked back at as a terrible mistake because I think right now there's a lot of opportunities to make acquisitions and expand where other people where you can do it much more economically than you could just 6 months ago. So I think a lot of people are making some pretty material mistakes by not moving forward. And I get the fact that we don't know where this thing's going, but it's not like we've never been here before. We have seen viruses. We have seen, pandemics. They do come and they do go. I mean, I don't think this is forever. Maybe for, the rest of this year, maybe part of next. Suppose it could keep going, but I'm thinking the thing's probably just going to die out at some point. That's what normally happens. So I just don't know how long it's going to take, and I understand that puts people in kind of a deer in the headlights type of thing. They're just kind of don't know what to do.
Yeah, for sure. Uncertainty is a scary place for a lot of people. The unknown is always scarier than any known. If you told us right now, hey, this is going to last until 2023, that's actually less scary than saying, hey, this might fizzle out by 2022, right? I'd just rather know because 2022 could be 2028 or 2040. So yeah, definitely uncertainty is always scary, and people can't get out of. If you think back to Maslow's hierarchy, right? He talks about safety and security and physiological needs must be met before we get into the higher pursuits of humanity, like self-identification and actualization. So when people are stuck in safety and security, they can't move forward. So,
Right.
but we can always remind them that over half of Fortune 500 companies today were founded during recessions. So this is when the opportunity exists, for sure. So thanks, Alex.
Yep.
John, anything to add?
Yeah, sure. One change in my industry, and Rhoda touched on this, is the power of the picture, because that's truly the first showing for any property. I had a listing last week where we received an offer sight unseen, and I've had a buyer by my side who has also written an offer sight unseen. Along those lines, so what else is happening is, well, along those lines is open houses. They're becoming far and few between for two reasons. Reason one, average day on market is so fast that a home that goes on the market, whatever, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, might be sold by Sunday open house. That's not an option. And number two, I think there's going to be some consumers, some shoppers who are not comfortable to go out and walk through a house. So that's changed, and that's been a big lead generation for me, the open houses. So I'm considering how I pivot from that.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, it's not just the sale of the house, obviously. It's all those people who walk in without an agent that are buyers. And you don't have that opportunity anymore. Awesome. Okay, so yeah, some of the other things that I've heard are, just visibility into what the teams are doing. Again, the grander teams that can be suppliers, that can be people you supply to without being on site. Escalation processes have just been lost in the shuffle. One of the things we might get to, just for thinking here, is so team members, they lost the water cooler, they lost the hallway meetings, they lost the lunch touch bases, all those things where they used to talk personally about each other, or about themselves. Sorry, well, they did talk about each other too, but they talked amongst each other, about themselves and, what they did last weekend, and they really had a chance to connect. And, obviously that empathy for each other always helps people go the extra mile. So that's sort of been lost. So, this is a recent survey. It came out in July of the positive impacts of COVID. So we talk about more empathy towards personal situations. So I think everybody's used to a kid hopping on a call, or someone having a jump because they just heard a crash or boom upstairs, or a dog's barking in the background, which was never acceptable before. But, now we're feeling that those are okay, and we understand. For firms with staffs, digital proficiency's gone up. We've all learned a bunch of Zoom tricks and other ways of communicating. And 15% of firms, and again, this is the way this study is, you only get one response. So what is the most positive thing? And 15% of firms said it's easier conducting and scheduling client meetings. So I don't know if folks are seeing that, but again, 15% of firms, so that's the number one positive impact of COVID. 4 things made up the 65% of firms, number one negative impact. So 22% of firms are reporting decreased staff productivity. Now, on the flip side of that, there are firms reporting increased staff productivity. So there's definitely something to be learned there. And then a lot of this was about, again, communication amongst teams. So difficulty managing or monitoring progress, more difficult collaboration, and just regular sharing among staff. And then that's resulting in less creativity and spontaneity among staff. So these are some of the things that we're seeing as of July.
Hey, Mike,
So, yes.
quick question. So, who exactly was surveyed? Because I would assume this would be a survey of companies that had the capability to do remote work. Is that correct?
Yeah, they were, I don't have the exact number, but they had to be greater than either 50 or 100 employees were surveyed here, because it
Okay.
was really about the teams.
Right. Right. Because if you're not someone that can do remote work, these statistics don't apply to you at all, I would think.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. So things have changed, but some things are still different. You know, what has worked in the past for you if you're selling to a client and you got into a communication snafu, or if you were buying from a supplier and things got into that communication snafu, what are some things that actually worked for you in the past? Because they may still work in this world, as long as you don't tell me it was a factory visit. Anybody have any things that, methods that have made them successful in the past?
Yeah, I always say it's my fault. It's my fault you screwed up, but it's my fault. And that seems to always work, and it still works today, even when the client knows that it's really their fault. Those when we have these communication issues, it's always my fault. So that works for me.
Yes. Yeah, that's one of mine too, Keith. Anytime I'm in a room and there's blame to be given, I take it first so we can move to the solution, because the blame doesn't help us.
Yeah, it's not. I'm not here for that. Let's move. Let's get it done. So,
Yeah. Anything else people have used in the past when there's snafus out there, working through them? So, Alex, do you have a staff? You mentioned you owned a company there. Do you have a large staff, small staff, no staff?
No, I'm down to a staff of one now. I used to, but I've taken the business down over the last few years, so I'm a staff of one.
Okay, cool.
Which does make managing it a lot easier.
Yeah. At least you're on the same page with your team.
Yep.
Good. Okay. So, anybody questions, big insights, anything before we move on and get into some of the details here? All right, I'll keep us moving. So, again, it's important to understand those changes. So, how we communicate with clients, the power of the big picture and the open houses. The people are just in that deer in the headlights, more fearful phase. So, developing a plan, I've got some thoughts here to share, and you can incorporate it in your plan. Some of these won't pertain to this group, so we'll flip through them so we can get on moving on to culture. So as always, the same old thinking is going to get you the same old results. But here it's even worse, right? In COVID, because if you're the same old thinking, you used to land in the same place. Well, guess what? The map has shifted, right? So you're coming down in probably a worse place because COVID's changed all the rules. So we're going to talk about, 3 things that might work here. And again, we may skip 1 or 2 based on who's in the audience today. I like to customize on the fly. Ooh, I didn't want to do that though. So the first one is to think small. And what that means, so when you're working with a client and you used to be able to be on site, or you used to do a lot of face-to-face, it was okay for you to assume that thing, if you saw a man face-to-face and he said the product's on time, or we're going to hit this delivery date, you could tell, right? Now it's a little tougher. So what I'm recommending is that people pick smaller hurdles, or smaller increments on the timeline, and do more frequent check-ins, right? So there's fewer surprises, right? So again, you're not seeing the person on a regular basis. And so you don't get to see the fear in their eyes or hear that in their voice as well on a Zoom conference as you would face to face when, oh yeah, it should be good. You don't get that same sense in a Zoom call like you did face to face. So keep it small and do more frequent check-ins. Some of the things that, there's a quick, it's called 5x3, which is you can check in with somebody in 15 minutes and get a great insights if you do these 3 things for 5 minutes each. So your first question you ask is, what's up? Something general. Just don't close it down. Don't say, are we on time? Leave it open and say, what's up? Something that's very open so that you have a better chance of pulling out some of those concerns that otherwise might be hidden. What are the daily metrics, or how close are we on our weekly? You were gonna develop 10,000 units a week, which means it's Wednesday, you should have 5,000. How are we doing this week, right? So however you ask that question, right? How are we tracking? And then where do you need my support, right? Again, that open-ended, where do you need my support? Maybe it's clarifying something about the buy, etc. But again, those 3 questions, pretty open, should be less than 5 minutes each, which means you can check in with everybody in less than 15 minutes each. So I don't have teams, so we won't get into this one. I don't think most of us have teams, but obviously onboarding new people is way different in a COVID world where they don't see people sitting across from them. They can ask questions every 5 minutes if they want. So we'll skip that. Delegation. So, one of the things with COVID is, and this can be across teams and across companies, is obviously, that communication has broken down. People will, whether they're your clients or your suppliers or vendors that you work with, people are going to feel more isolated now. So if you're working in a place where you're working as part of a web, let's say, of multiple people from different companies trying to deliver something, or in any sort of partnership, it's important to have somebody on the team that's constantly listening for, are we getting shared understanding in this new communication style? Is everybody really on the same page? And one of the things that I talk about is having sort of that ambassador of the new culture, and how do we maintain visibility to project teams, not necessarily aligned, but not talking enough to know that they aren't. And so this is just always a fun matrix when you think about delegation. So on the left, you have someone's will, that's their attitude or their desire to do the work. On the bottom, go left to right, you have someone's skill, which is just quite frankly their ability to get the work done. So you can see with a high will and a high skill, that person wants to do it and they can do it. That's great. Go delegate to them, give them some authority, give them some autonomy, and let them go. If someone has a high will but a low skill in an area, well, okay, let's advise them, give them some guidance or some training. They already want to do it, which is more than half the battle. We know that, right? I need somebody who's interested in doing the work. So you just give them some advice and move them forward. If someone has a high skill and low will to do something, then we need to find a way to motivate them, which could be through incentives or helping them see the bigger picture, what this could mean for their career. And if someone has a low skill and a low will, that's where we just direct them. So this is what I need to have done. This is what I need to do it. And this is how you do it. And, you have to get that specific with them. So anyway, it's a nice model, again, even across teams, to think about, who should be doing what. And when you assign somebody, what support they may need, whether it's, the motivation or simple about guidance.
Mike?
Yes.
Go
ahead, Rhoda.
It seems to me that chart is good for dealing with clients as well, because like John, you might tell a client, you should do this or that to save your house, or you should buy this or replace that. So to some degree, they may not be willing to do that. and they may be willing to pay to have someone do that. So you need to kind of with the client find out how willing they are. It's interesting because I hired a photographer to take a new photo of me. And I literally went on Google and found somebody, and he was wonderful. But he wanted me to go out to Avon, which is where his studio was. And as it turned out, because he was willing to come to me, he charged $20 more. That was it for the whole session. And I didn't have that inconvenience. So I think with all clients, there's something that they may know how to do and be unwilling to do, or they don't know how to do it and they really don't feel comfortable about that. So, how do you deal with people? This is a very good chart, I think.
Yeah, in John's case, that low skill and low will, hey, you need to rewire this room. that's not a direct, that's a refer, right? Find them an electrician
Right.
before they blow the house up and burn it down before you make your commission. So yeah, it can definitely be adapted. Rhoda, thank you. Okay, so those are some of the key parts. Just to me, the top 3 parts of a plan. We'll get into the team culture next for just a few minutes. Anybody, thoughts, questions, ahas? All right, I know I'm going fast, but I'm trying to get this in. So looks like everybody's with us. Didn't lose anybody yet. Culture. So again, as you're working with your clients that you maybe used to see face to face or go out to lunch with and develop those relationships, if it's a larger team, especially 2, 3, 4 members of a client or supplier that jump on a call with you, there are still some fun things you can do. One of them is a quick virtual tour of your office on the camera, and what that does is it helps people just what it's like when you talk to somebody on the phone a couple times and you kind of already pictured what they look like, then you meet them face to face and like, whoa, that's nothing what I thought it was like, right? So the
Hey,
virtual office tour.
We're not dating this week.
Yeah, so the virtual office tour can do what it does is it helps people picture you in your workspace, and it creates an automatic psychological and emotional bond with you on a different level than what it would be like if you're just on a screen with the background, which is how I work. But you can even do something like, okay, pick up something in the room that means something to you and why, right? There's just little things that you can do. Maybe you've got a client that the two of you talk about mountain biking, and so that you're both in shape, and so you say, all right, man, I'm getting a little COVID-15 here, let's do a push-up contest, see who wins, right? Anything like that, just to keep those connections in some way that you used to have during those lunches when you sat down and weren't talking just shop the whole time. The water cooler, right? So we all know the office water cooler is often a symbol of gossip and wasted time, but there's actually a lot of great stories and anecdotal evidence for cases that have taken place either in the office cooler, walking in from the parking lot together, sitting across from each other at lunch, overhearing someone's conversation in the hallway and adding value that have related to literally hundreds of billions of dollars just through stories, not documented. No one's ever done that study. But, if you sum up the stories, you get into hundreds of billions of dollars of value that's been created for companies, again, with these sort of sidebar conversations and looking for ways to replicate them. If there's a struggle across the teams, let's just have next time we have our Zoom check-in, let's just do a breakout room. And the leaders of the two teams that are not coming together, not struggling, we're automatically going to put those, purposely put those two in a room together. They're not going to argue in front of everybody. They're not going to hash it out over a telephone. but maybe a Zoom call, put them in face-to-face after a casual warm-up and let them talk. And surprisingly, when we let that happen for people, they actually can take care of themselves for the most part, as long as they both have, a can-do attitude. They will figure it out. So yeah, that's, again, one of the things that's definitely changed, and one of the things we have to try to replicate in different ways, especially, again, if we're working with, more than just a one-on-one. And then again, break down barriers. A lot of this is really for multiple cross-team committees or project teams. So I don't think that necessarily relates to most of the folks here. So we'll skip it. But, again, this is where we talked about earlier, some culture brokers that would be, spread throughout the teams and keeping their eyes on that communication. We talk about that here. And then one of the big things that I recommend is if you've got 4 different teams on there, you bring the directors or VPs of those teams together, and they decide before the project starts, what's priority 1, what's priority 2, what's priority 3. Because guess what? If you can't do it as the leaders, it's going to probably be the loudest voice in the room that's going to that's going to be setting the room's priorities. So that's really what the goal of this slide is. But we will slide on. All right. So we're getting to the end. What's been most helpful for you? What should I make sure I include next time I do this? Love to hear from everybody, or anybody. We'll take it.
Back to my other thought, I think that for network groups like this one, where most of us don't have a staff, don't have employees, even though we may advise people who do, that willing and able concept might be the central point. But having to do with prospects and clients, customers, as opposed to your employees. In other words, the same presentation.
Yeah, definitely. Again, Rhoda, you are the delegate, right? So you're the high skill, high will, right? This is what you do, and you love to do it. And companies find that they don't have that person on their team, so they find you, right? So that's where you fit in. It can help you talk about your business, position yourself in a conversation, etc. Just understanding that.
The other thought that I have is that we're all communicating more on LinkedIn and on email. So we're doing a lot more written communication, if you will, than we normally were used to doing. And so spelling, tone, abruptness, just all kinds of things come into play that didn't used to matter.
Absolutely.
So now you kind of have to pay attention to them so that you don't come across as bossy. And my own pet peeve is that I write to you 4 different things and you answer the first one and ignore the other 3.
Yeah, it's the first one or the last one, isn't it, Rhoda? It's either the first or the last they pick. Right. And sometimes it's our fault for asking 3 yes/no questions and you get one yes back. You don't know which one it's for.
Right.
Absolutely. Awesome. Thanks, Rhoda.
But thank you, Liz.
Hey, Mike, I kind of liked your little synopsis of the what's up, ask for a metric, and then how can I help you? I think those 3 things help me at least kind of focus on how I'm dealing with a client, particularly ones like you say, you're not necessarily, I'm used to going out. 95% of my clients, when I saw them, they don't come to me, I go to them. So I think I'll just keep that in mind and try to work with that in terms of how I work either in written communications or that kind of thing. But I just thought that was kind of like what's most helpful for you. That was kind of helpful for me. Yeah, I enjoyed that.
Awesome. Thank you. Glad you did.
Hey, Mike, this is Tony Havix. I was kind of curious, you presented the data on those that are doing better during this time period and those that are doing worse. Is there anything you've seen that could tease out what are the details that are causing some people to do better and some people to do worse?
Oh yeah, so that industry helps if you're in the medical field. Um, selling PPE is good. That makes you successful these days. But actually, Tony, that was firms saying what was been most positive about the experience and most negative about the experience. They weren't necessarily the winners and the losers in the COVID world.
And again, those are probably bigger firms on average.
Yeah. I forget what the number was, but they either had to have a minimum of 50 or a minimum of 100 employees. So they're at least sizable firms that have teams that work together. So that was a lot about some of it was, you saw some measures on individual productivity, but a lot of that, if you look at it, was the collaboration across teams, and so that was the nature of that study.
Mike, thank you for your time and presentation this morning. One of my reminders and takeaways from this is frequent check-ins with my clients, right? So as a few of us in this group don't have employees, we all have clients, and I'm reminded of the phrase, there is no such thing as over communication. And I touch base with my buyers or sellers who are active or in contract at least once a week. And even if the update is no update, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Client, the update is no update. What'd you have for breakfast? How was lunch?
Yeah.
15
minutes can become one. That's fine, as long as there's nothing to talk about. That's often a good thing in your field.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. No. Well. Yeah. I'm torn personally between no news is no news, and no news is good news. I kind of lean towards the no news is no news.
There you go.
That's another hour for another day, right, Keith?
Depends on your personality.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thanks for having me, everybody. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
I always love
Mike,
to share.
appreciate you giving us some time and a couple of pointed insights. I think this whole Zoom experience for me, I mentioned it to our group before. I'd never done one of these things before we started, so it's been a very new experience for me, and I've learned a few things. It's also allowed us to do some outreach to people. I mean, you're in Ohio, man. I mean, just think about that. That just knocks me out. That we can now go all over the country as long as we get a connection and a commitment, and get good speakers all over the place. So it's really been a blast, and it's really been interesting to us, and so I really appreciate that. Hey, we're about to wrap this thing up. I like to keep people on time. Tony, just give us a minute and introduce yourself. You joined us a little late.
I'm Tony Havix with PH2. We do environmental health and safety consulting and forensic engineering. And last couple of weeks, I've been out of town working on some projects, and I'm getting ready to head out of town again.
There you go. So, hey, appreciate you joining us, Tony. With that, hey, Mike, the way we like to wrap it up, just to make sure we normally record these things for our other members. So I like to wrap it up with a smile. So if everybody will look up, including Rhoda, and give me a smile, because what I'll do is I'll take a picture of this, and that'll be my intro to our video. And with that, hey, I'd like to say thank you guys all so much for showing up. Mike, you'll also receive a link to this so you can see what it is. And I'll see all you guys next week. John, I believe we have a speaker next week.
That's right. Miss Adele Bush will be presenting next week.
Oh, yay.
Yeah, she knew you, Mike.
Yeah, Adele's my buddy. We actually, she works with me. I've hired her 3 times now, I believe. She does great stuff.
Right. So she'll be speaking next week, and you're free to join us. I know you have commitments and stuff, but you're free to join us anytime. And so we'll see you. So I will see all you guys next week, and get tuned in and stay safe out there, people. All right. Bye-bye.